MPs are due to debate the government's plans to guarantee annual licences for oil and gas projects in the North Sea. The Offshore Petroleum licensing bill has caused some unrest among Conservative backbenchers, with the former Energy Minister and MP for Kingsdown, Chris Skidmore, resigning over the issue.
Should North Sea oil and gas licences be granted annually rather than on a rolling 5-year basis? Would switching to such a scheme improve energy security, help hit net zero targets or reduce bills? There are those who argue that annual licences are already in effect available, and this is all going to be discussed by MPs who are voting on the legislation today. It's all happening after Chris Skidmore, the Conservative MP, resigned last week in protest at the PM's plans to max out these licences, or reserves, the North Sea oil and gas reserves. So Alok Sharma is Conservative MP, former minister who served as president of the COP26 UN Climate Summit in 2021. Joins us now. So Alok, good morning.
Good morning.
Will you be voting for the legislation today?
I will not be voting for this bill. And actually, as it's currently drafted, this bill is a total distraction. It is actually a smoke and mirrors bill, which frankly changes nothing. I mean, the North Sea Transition Authority, which is the body that actually grants oil and gas licenses, can already grant licenses when they think it's necessary. And the Energy Department has made pretty clear that irrespective of this bill, that will not change. But what this bill does do is reinforce that unfortunate perception about the UK rowing back from climate action. We saw this last autumn with the chopping and changing of some policies, and actually not being serious about meeting our international commitments. I mean, just a few weeks ago at COP28, the 28th UN Climate Conference, the UK government signed up to transition away from fossil fuels. This bill is about doubling down on granting more oil and gas production licenses. It's actually the opposite of what we agreed to do internationally. So I won't be supporting it.
So just explain, if you wouldn't mind, to our listeners who don't follow this as closely as you do, why you think the government, I know you don't speak for them, but why might it be, just rationally, that the government is pursuing this legislation if, in your view, there's no evidence for its efficacy, if it's a distraction, and if it goes against what was said at COP26? I think a lot of people listening to you won't really understand.
Sure. Well, I mean, look, I think that's a question for the government to answer. I mean, what I would just say is that I think the time that is being spent on this bill could be better spent by ministers pushing forward on plans for a clean energy transition and actually supporting people access jobs of the future. I mean, one of the things the government has said is that this bill is about improving domestic energy security. But the reality is that the oil and gas extracted from the North Sea is owned by private companies. The government doesn't get to control who they sell to.
Sure.
And of course, the price of oil and gas is also set internationally, so it won't necessarily lower domestic energy bills either.
Let me just put to you what the Chancellor said about this, if I may, Sir Alok, on Saturday, because we did ask him about it, and I can hear the passion with which you're speaking about it, but we did ask the Chancellor about this. He said, the independent panel for climate change that we have in this country is very clear. Even when we reach net zero in 2050, we will still get a significant proportion of our energy from fossil fuels, and domestic oil and gas is 4 times cleaner than imported oil and gas. Briefly, if you would.
Well, the UK's Independent Climate Change Committee has also been pretty clear that continued expansion of new oil and gas reserves is inconsistent with our climate commitments. Actually, if you really want to enhance energy security and bring down bills, the government should be delivering on its ambitious plans for expanding homegrown clean energy. A lot more wind power, a lot more solar.
So Alok Sharma, Conservative MP, former minister who served as president of the COP26 UN Climate Summit. Thank you very much indeed for joining you. I had to end it there because we're about to hear a rocket launch, Justin.